Welcome to Segovia, Spain. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's only about a half an hour north of Madrid on the train. Why are we here? Well, first of all, this big guy right behind me. It's an incredibly well-preserved Roman aqueduct. But there's a lot more to see here, and we only have a day. Let's get going. Every city has those novelties. Here, on Calle de Juan Bravo, is the Casa de Los Picos. I think you can tell what's so different about it. There are all these pyramid-like reliefs. They're made out of granite. This building was a 15th century medieval palace. Now, it's a school of applied arts. The Jews played a prominent role here in Segovia. To find out more about it, I'm going to go check out this educational center. It used to be the homes of some Jewish families here. Around 1215, Jews first started arriving, and at the high point, there were about 100 families. They were pretty spread out across the city. Many of them served as craftsmen. Around 1480, they were forced to live in a confined part of the city called the Jewish Quarter that we're walking through right now. Finally, in 1492, the Catholic monarchs expelled them, just kicked them out, all of them. Some of them went to Portugal, but that respite lasted only a few years because they then instituted a decree to force the Jews out of their country. Sadly, there are very few artifacts from that era, so we don't have a really great idea of how they lived, just that they did live here. As you walk around here, it is really like what it was, frozen in time, frozen in medieval time. Many of them did convert to Catholicism just so they can stay in the country, and others were exiled, like 40,000, give or take, were exiled out of the country, never to return. Now, 500 years later, in the early 2000s, both Spain and Portugal have decreed that because of their ancestors, the Jews, the Sephardic Jews or Spanish Jews, were allowed to get citizenship again. This cathedral was built in 1525, and it wasn't the first one, because most people are like, 1525, that's kind of late for a cathedral in a town in Spain. It wasn't the first one. The first one was built in the 1200s, and it was destroyed by armies. They needed a new cathedral. They used parts of that old one to build this one. This one, though, started in 1525. They didn't actually consecrate it till 1768. Why? Because for 50 years, they were trying to figure out what kind of dome to put on it. There was a lot of domes that were falling apart, and they didn't want that to happen here. 1768 makes it the last Gothic cathedral built in Spain. This is the attic of the bell ringer's house, and really it's his place of work. I'm going to focus in on the holes. These holes were where ropes would hang, and he would pull them to ring the bells. We're at 132, almost there. Getting there, getting there. That wasn't so bad. Pretty amazing, huh? 360 around view of the city and bells. This tower is only 88 meters high. It used to be 108 when it was a wooden structure, but in 1614 there was a big fire, destroyed the tower, and they rebuilt it in stone, so it won't have another fire incident. We are heading to the Alcazar, or the palace. One of the interesting things is the streets that are heading that way. The gutter from the aqueduct run underneath this, and so for many years, centuries, millennia, the houses here could get running water because of the aqueduct. Did I make a wrong turn or something? Did I end up in Florida? Disney World? No, this is still Segovia, and this is Alcazar. It's an 11th century palace. 22 kings have lived here, including Queen Isabella. Queen Isabella was coronated here. She's funded Christopher Columbus's expedition to the Americas. This is the horse room. All the walls here were decorated like this from the 13th century, and it stems from the Moors, the Muslims. Castle was burnt to the ground, essentially, in the mid-19th century and replaced. So this is all recreated, except this tile here is from the 16th century, from an area called Talavera, Spanish tile. Above there is the emblems of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. Over here is Henry IV. This is his emblem. And those fruits are pomegranates. He said, ruling is like the flavor of pomegranates. bittersweet. The ceilings, these are copies because the fire ruined them. They were actually pulled from a church. Apparently the Moorish architects, the Moorish designers created similar works in multiple buildings. This is the Hall of the Kings. It has all the monarchs who reigned over Spain between the 13th and 16th centuries. Gives a little bio underneath. This is called the robe room, and it has an interesting story behind it. King Alfonso X was telling folks that if God had consulted him, the world would be a much better place. The Franciscan monk didn't particularly care for that and said that he had blasphemed. That night there was a fire, destroyed part of the palace, killed a host of people. So the king went to confession and said, "For my penance, I will build this room." This is the arms hall. Here's one interesting one. It's called a pedrero, and inside is an example of what the ammunition would be, a big rock. Can you imagine that flying out and landing somewhere in town? Yikes. These were jail cells for prominent prisoners, like generals. Daylight. Yes. Climb stairs, you get rewarded with incredible views. Not to mention bad hair. The reason I wanted to come to this tower is also because it's the site of where King Alfonso X in the 13th century, he was nicknamed the Wise, made some astronomical observations. So significant that there is an ancient lunar crater named after him called Alphonsus. Oh, I almost forgot to tell you guys. One of the other reasons this castle is important, it housed the treasury that Queen Isabella used to pay Christopher Columbus, and ultimately led to the discovery of America. Fairy tale's over. Well, at least our visit to a Cinderella castle is over. Walk around the city's charming streets, you'll undoubtedly see striking patterns on the facades of many of the buildings. Designs like these were common in Italy in the 16th century, but they were found in Spain too. Segovia was the principal city that saw this sgraffito technique used extensively. This began during the Mudéjar occupation in Spain in the 1200s and continued into the Renaissance in the 1600s. And finally, the hallmark, the crowning glory of Segovia, the Roman aqueduct. This is no ordinary aqueduct. First of all, it dates back to as early as the 1st century BC, and it was supplying water from the Frio River till the mid-1800s. Talk about efficient. This thing was running for 2,000 years. How many things do you know run for 2,000 years? We're under an arch right here. There's 167 of these guys. And what it's built with are granite blocks. There are well over 20,000 of these. There's no mortar connecting them, and each one weighs 2 tons. Water would run along the top of the aqueduct, leveraging gravity to induce the flow of water, which is why the aqueduct was so tall. It runs about 2,950 feet long, which puts it about a little more than half a mile. Most of the time you won't be able to see it because it's underneath us. If you think about what went into this more than 2,000 years ago, astonishing. And why did the Romans build here? It's not like there was a Roman settlement here, but Segovia runs in between 2 major Roman settlements, and this was on that road. So it made sense. When Segovia, I don't usually do this, but I'm Filipino, and my favorite food is lechon kawale, which is a roasted pig, and I wanted to see Segovia's version of a roasted pig. Okay. It's a lot more tender than the Filipino version. Wow, it's perfect. I could use some Filipino sauce though. But the flavor's amazing. Hope you enjoyed this quick visit to Segovia, Spain. Maybe it'll inspire you to come yourself. Thanks for joining me on Mary Goes Round the World. Here's my tip for you. Go the bus route. If you're going from Madrid to Segovia, you'll save more than half the cost. Yes, it takes a little longer. It takes about an hour and 20 minutes versus the 30-minute train ride. Plus, you'll be right there. You just can walk into town. Here, you have to take a public bus if you're coming into the train station in Segovia. Then that costs more money, some more time. There you go. Bus.